Hi, my name is Frank de Raad, aka Coreflux, aka Comedy Reflux, aka Saffron Streams, soon to be Saffron Streams Interactive. Ooh la la. I like to make video games, and today I would like to do a postmortem with you of my game, Drawing of the Last Breath. It will also be kind of a director's commentary and a playthrough. And below the video, I'll try to give a timestamp for when the actual playing starts. So to give a bit of a context, Drawing of the Last Breath is a fan game of a podcast that I made, a D&D live play of Acquisitions Incorporated, the C team. It was made during Corona, and it kind of kept me sane because it gave me something to do. It was started in April of 2020, just a month after the lockdown started here in Belgium. And while I was developing it, suddenly I got a deadline because PAX Online, Penny Arcade Expo Online, was announced. And I kind of wanted to release it then, since the two are kind of connected. Some of the same people are involved. Drawing of the Last Breath is a free fan game. It was never meant to be commercial since I don't own the IP. It was the second game that I made that was a bit bigger when I switched over from making mobile games to making PC games using the Godot engine. It offers about 30 minutes of gameplay, 60 if you collect all of it, roughly saying. There's some linear levels that you can replay to go back and collect your collectibles. There are several spells and abilities to unlock. The game itself is my ode to the C Team podcast, the live play, and specifically to the character of Kethris Draup, who's the protagonist in the game, and also a bit to Chris Straub, the person who plays Kethris Draup. And you can see how the two intertwine a bit. The game was made in 5 months. Most of that was after hours development. And in the end, in order to get my deadline, I did do some crunch. So I did release it in time, but I thought it could use some more eyes on it. So today I would like to do with you a playthrough, a director's commentary, and a postmortem, where I will try to illustrate some of the problems that I had, but also sum up some of the lessons that I learned. For example, I kind of did a mismatch with my target audience. I made it in the first place for other fans of the D&D podcasts to play and enjoy, but I think most of them are more into RPGs like Baldur's Gate, which makes a lot of sense, and less into jumpy, puzzly kinds of games like Metroidvanias, and specifically the Metroidvania that I made. The jumping puzzles in my game were a bit harsh, difficult. The puzzle unlocking that was put into the game to make the collecting enough collectibles a bit more enjoyable. The puzzle system was a bit too obtuse. You'll see why later. And the game was not a really good match for people playing it out or trying it out on a stream. Some people that I met in the community were streaming, so that was a good avenue for getting some more views on it. But a puzzle game is not a game that is easy to stream because you can get stuck in a puzzle game. You can feel a bit like you're dumb or you don't get the puzzles, so not very confident. That's not very nice moment to have or to experience on your stream. And then the final problem is that I used voiceover. I used extracts from the game to kind of support my world building, to kind of connect the game more to my video game to the D&D game. But the problem is that those stretches of dialogue that I pushed in, one, they were too long. Two, they were during moments that players were sometimes either playing, or I stretched out certain parts of the game just to have time to let all of the dialogue run. And three, for new players that are not familiar with the show, that made no sense, and that just felt like random voice lines. That said, the third problem, since my target audience were fans of the game, that was probably one of the lesser problems involved. Now, the game itself, I'll try to let the game run, let the dialogue run, that you can observe all of it, try to play through some of it, and then at certain points, kind of try to look back at what was happening and why perhaps certain parts were a bit designed in not the best way. First, I'll try to get the game. So I made a custom startup
Black
screen.
Altar was the tipping point in the Underdark, a language that I could read but could not make out one of the sigils, which turned out to be the And my belief that this is a proper noun, this is a name of the thing that is beneath all reality.
So I think the first voiceover dialogue does its job well of like putting you into a certain mood, but we'll see if the others, if we can say the same thing about it.
What was Lower Galaderth? High houses that collapse remain empty. When that happens to enough of them, the wall is rebuilt behind them. Those places are cast out. What they said was that the rot in House Verhoothly was so poisonous that the family, their servants, the children were all transformed. The process drives most mad. Who is it?
Thriss Rosesley.
Thriss isn't a name.
No, it's a mockery of a name. It's from Cahill Thriss, the unbelieving Thriss. After the shame of my departure, apparently my sister and my mother were unable to restore the house.
So it was the sin of disbelief that began it.
I was the only one, except my father may have also been a heretic.
I can deposit you near the base of the path that leads up. The road itself is no longer in use, of course. It's outside the walls, and the creatures that live there aren't the sort that fix roads or maintain civilizations.
Let's be underway then.
So that's the first long while of dialogue passed, and now, as we could see from the pop-up, we need to unlock a spell, and we come across a part where large part of the audience is probably already getting somewhat frustrated because there's a lot of explanation. There's two screens. There is some explanation that you need to select this specific slot, and that you then need to do a word guessing puzzle. So, drawing of the last breath, the collectibles are the Tetrathanotica, which are Tetrathanoticae, the sigils that Kithris Draup collects and uses to gather knowledge about the occult in the podcast game. You need to combine these sigils to unlock certain abilities and spells, and you do this through this puzzle game where you have kind of hints underneath these components, and these hint at certain sigils that you found. For example, revisit and rethink potentialities is a very obtuse way of perhaps describing altered. Some of these descriptions are not direct. Luckily, the first puzzle, most of the people collecting this will only have these four sigils that you need in the order that you need them to. You place them in there. You can figure out the controls. and then you unlock enhanced repositioning. So enhanced repositioning is basically a double jump. Luckily, I at least pointed out explicitly between brackets, but a lot of this game had a focus on lore and world building first, and then player experience, player learning curve, and all that later. Possibly also because it was my first foray into a longer format game. As you can see, you have a nice overview screen of where you can collect your sigils. There's a nice piece of lore. You have your words. These Tetratonotica, there's 50 odd something of them. Chris Straub invented all of these. There's a very nice conceptual design space around what these Tetratonotica are. They're all composed of 4 lines that are made at the time of death. The user, the inscriber, can use their own blood and their 4 fingers to scribe a few of these sigils on the floor in order to capture or note down, scribe down what they see at the moment of passing from life to death. And other scholars can then read these hastily scribed signs in order to possibly unearth more knowledge about this big mystery. But in the game, we just use these to unlock our double jump, and this allows us to pass by this very simple puzzle of having to pause this jump on thing, followed immediately by something that blocks your path, but with the double jump you can pass. And then another part of the obtuseness, some of the sigils that you need to collect in order to unlock all of the puzzle abilities are hidden away, and you kind of need to jump up to certain spots, and only when you get near them you get a small pop-up to note that there's something here. For example, the thing wrapped around the pole. If you then press your button, you can see that I picked up an extra sigil. Nitpixie, one of the people who was made canon, was put into the game by participating with bits on the Twitch channel when they were playing the game proper. And I think we should be close to triggering another line of dialogue. Whoops. And there's some challenges with these jumping puzzles. For example, here the point where it detects that you die is put a bit too low, so if we jump a bit later in order to save some time the platform to respawn, you might still die. What I did do well in this game is some UI is not showing yet, or is not showing all the information, as long as it's not useful yet. So for example, I'm not showing too much from spells yet. There's buttons that don't do anything yet because the spell selection don't really make sense of showing that to you, since we're not really in the position yet to select multiple spells, since we have one ability and we'll now unlock our first spell. So same, we have collected some sigils. There's these hints that it's looking for certain sigils to be put in certain spots, and once you put in all the good ones, it unlocks your spell or ability. In this case, Dissonant Whispers, which for people who are familiar with the D&D game, That might make some sense. Now it's becoming a proper Metroidvania. We're actually able to do something about enemies, because when you first encounter this enemy, you're basically defenseless. You have a few spells and abilities in this game with which you can defend yourself. Dissonant Whispers is one of them, but yeah, basically before you unlock it, you have access to nothing. And where the obtuseness of the puzzle spell unlocking was one way where we lost a lot of players, this next part will be the second one. It's a jumping puzzle, which is quite hard, because if you have a... Now, these days, it's still that way when you are playing it with a controller. That used to be the same for keyboards. That if you are doing this jumping puzzle, you have these platforms that crumble as you stand on them. And as if that wasn't bad enough yet, you also have these enemies that are not only attacking and possibly damaging and killing you, they also have hitboxes and collision. They can kind of stop you in midair, making you miss certain jumps. So as you can see, I now have already almost no health left, and I just made the last part of that puzzle, because as you could see, sometimes you just need to jump and hope for the best. Even at the end of a jumping puzzle, I would just do this to players, and yeah, as you get more experience, as you have the better common sense of doing a bit more playtesting. Of course, during Corona, that was a bit harder than it is now. You probably already get a feel for that. Having this kind of player friction is a bad thing. We are in Lower Qualidarth.
So at the apex of this heap of failed initiatives, the woman that has risen to this is gazing down upon this battlefield that she's only come into halfway. Her eyes are passing from one Cthulhu Draub to another, and she says,
"How many times must I kill you?"
And so here at the bottom we meet a second Drider, but it's accompanied by a smaller priestess-like looking Drider. And while the one is attacking us with melee, the other one is using spells to give us a hard time. Luckily, at least this time, we immediately have our damage spells, which we can use to run around a bit and attack from a distance, while we unlock more lore through audio, especially when we defeat.
You have the form of your beloved goddess now.
This mystically amplified voice of her son cuts straight through her. There is a moment of glassy-eyed reverie. She says, "If only I had killed you one more time, the reward would have been." She collapses on the side.
Now, the reason why I'm getting through this game a bit more quite fluently is not because I still know everything from the game. It's because I had the first recording this morning where I said too many ums.
The base of this house, the heavy doors that you remember being made of shining mithril, even the hinges are gone. It's just like a passageway now. There's no ceremony to it at all. There's just a threshold. And so as you enter, you can see stairs that go up to other regions of the house.
And so I collected all of the extra sigils that were lying around, hopefully to afterwards be able to unlock some of the optional spells. Because we're at the end of this level, we should have all the sigils for our last obligatory spell that you need to finish the game. And this sigil I picked up right now is one of my favorites. It's the only one that was not created by Chris Stroud, but was made by a friend of his, Ryan Hartman, who filled in for Chris when he was not at the game table. And he created the Engulf sigil, also using 4 notches to form a special sigil, Engulf. And yeah, I don't think I need to point out all the things that makes it funny. And so I'll pick up the other sigils in this house in order to show you the rest of this level. This is supposed to be the level where Kithra's Drought grew up, or at least the ruins left of it. It's a bit of a special level because it uses these stairs that kind of have the same style of interaction as the ladders in the game have. So when you're near them, you press the grab button and you get put onto the stairs. And the disadvantage is if you then walk back, you're no longer considered on the stairs, so you kind of drop off. That's one of the intricacies of 2D games and stairs and ladders. That said, for a game that was made in 5 months, I think I shouldn't be too hard on myself. It has its good points on it. Lesser points. As you get further from the door, the level also becomes a bit darker. Thought that was fun to kind of give it a bit of an ominous feel, together with this sound that also does not sound too encouraging, I would say. And then we get to the final part of this house level, where you have the small hole, which you want to crawl through, but yeah, that seems to be a bit of an issue. So there's another spell. It was this one, yeah. So you offer a comfort and bribe, send out your presence, bind it in contract, and you make into an extension of the will. And perhaps fans of the show, while I try to figure out which of these runes it had again. Binding contract pacts, make into an extension of the will. Nope. So we unlock our final obligatory spell, Find Familiar, and people who are familiar with the show will know which familiar Kithrisdrab has. It is the staff he was carrying the whole time. It is Legati, named after
There is a
the
very
horror
small,
character.
simple knife
Offer.
with a handle of black wood as its hilt. A very simple handmade carving of the Unity icon that represents that which endures.
Dad, what are you doing in here?
Audio incoming. World building.
You're using your skills as an arcanist to assess the mystic echoes of the enchantment and where the blade should be. There is a void present there.
So we find a hollow knife.
From the blade of the knife, it feels like a breeze, like through a doorway. As you turn it, it's like looking through a crack. There's something in it. There is something inside it. Kithris's hand thrusts the blade directly into your eye. Apparently, inside this knife, there's a second life. It is a well-appointed study, closed on the desk, the Book of Unity. And in the base of the jar, there is a worm that has a shell and lots of legs. It begins to ping and nip at the round portion of the jar.
And so we find ourselves in the study where Kithrisdrab found a knife in his old parental house. And in that knife, that is a bit hollow, is an extraplanar dimension where his father made a small study. And there we finds books and mostly spends time. But most importantly, in order to access it, he kind of needs to bring himself close to it, and he does this by stabbing himself in the eye in the show. Like, we now have a lot of sigils that have been collected because, yeah, the study was a good place to put in a lot of them. I also put some references to other work of Chris Straub. And this basically also acted as a kind of in-between hub where you can go back to earlier levels to collect sigils that you missed. You can spend some time here and hang out, and you can also progress. You can save, of course, after collected all of the sigils that are present in this level. And then you can also climb up, and in this frame where you have this scene that looks a bit the same, like your focus that tells you where you are putting your spells. This is a twin stick control, by the way, even though on the left side you can also use the D-pad to use the right stick to aim, to determine where you send out your spells. And in order to mark where you are aiming, I use the same piece, so that might give a hint to players that there's something possibly connecting these two. And then I drop you in this very weird scene where there is where you're basically in space and there's spaceships.
As you're standing here in
ships in
this
space.
slightly cool expanse, the entire planet has split into 4 wedges, and those grip the Sanguilith in space. Deeper, there is a glass orb, and inside there is a small but profoundly resilient woman. She has manufactured 2 additional arms. Her arms each hold a tiny orb, And she is trying to pull all 4 of these orbs together into a single point. Inside that orb, the sound of her scream.
And so these jumping puzzles are quite ridiculously hard. So I constantly ask the player to make like jumps into the unknown and just trust that somehow they'll spot where they need to go in time for them to use their double jump to correct their course, because if they don't do that, yeah, it's not that I try to estimate where they would land. But I don't know which spells I have unlocked by now, but I don't know if there's that much use in showing those. There's basically a kind of bullet time that you can unlock. There's a triple jump, where the double jump just uses the jump button. The triple jump then acts as a spell. It uses mana just like the bullet time does. There's I think there was a fireball or something as well, but I was not able to unlock that in the playthrough just now. The triple jump you can use to take another route to get to the boss here.
Crystal rises up underneath the discarded
Then the big
sheath
reveal.
of skin that was once Cthulhu to inhabit it. A dusty rib cage slides up onto the structure. Inside the too wide mouth, you can see tiny blinks of jeweled eyes.
To the herald, I say, hello, friend.
The mouth opens with something like parody of delight. You can see Legati come out, lick the air, and just traveling through itself, manipulating it as it approaches.
Is it
Bringing
everything
that
you
stone here. Oh, so much. Suppressed the entire organism. You've pushed it completely to the side. Now the reigns, and where the reigns, I may reign.
There's a lot of stuff happening here. You're fighting the boss. It's attacking you, but at the same
Do you
time,
remember
each time you
what I
jump,
said I would do?
Crystal cracks a bit more.
You would consume the father. You would consume who birthed you.
As you whittle down the health, you get more dialogue and lore. And yeah,
She
usually
was once a tiny
will-
crystal, a tiny piece grown on the earth,
jumping more.
grown into this. And now look
Once you
what she
crack
has done.
the crystal completely,
I think I would make changes.
the game becomes a bit more hard. I did find out this morning
Such
that
was my
something
upset
seems to be not working so good anymore with the final phase of the boss.
The entirety of the structure becomes black onyx.
Of course, if I just kill the boss
Why did you allow yourself to
without
be part of this thing?
The Sangolith was
unlocking
a
this.
function of pure order to counter threats to that order. The first 3 you see here entered so that the true threat, that of Hastur, could be contained. Ever greater power was required to be consumed.
If Hastur's intent is to bring about more of this disorder or exist between the rules, then we must have more appetizing rules for it to destroy. Imagine an impossibly ordered, an impossibly rigid, determinist universe.
Describe what it would be like to conceive of it, and it will be made real.
It's a extra-dimensional construct. It's a single object. Time is one of the linear dimensions. It is dark. It is impassable. It is a single atom, infinite in size. It does not interact with anything, and nothing interacts with it. It is pointless, and yet it is the underpinning of everything else that is possible. When we dream at night, Our dreams are absurd, and they make no sense. Imagine a thing beneath us that we are the dream of it, and this is absurd. Now go a layer beneath that one, until you just have that one indivisible unit.
The 4 cleaver-like blades of pleasant home nooks, world ship collapses in, crushing the structure completely. Shadow Council, Mayor Lavers, please you. Thank you so much for putting up with Chris.
Yeah,
You know,
it.
Please talk to your therapist about that.
Yeah.
he does his best, right? But it's like, right?
You know, we
At the
try to
same
have
time,
fun. We need defeated more gods.
And so after the final credits, you get some extra space to collect the last of the sigils, but because it would be too easy to just do this whenever, I put a time limit on it. Each time you fall down, you get ported back to beginning.
The
You don't
Black
get them
Altar
all.
was the tipping
Well, then
point
you need
in
to
the Underdark. A
defeat
language
the
that I
final
could
boss
read,
again.
but could not make out one of the
And
sigils, which
that
turned out to be the
is-
Ur. And my belief that this is a proper noun, this is a name.
That is Drawing of the Last Breath. You can download it from my itch page. You can check out Acquisitions Incorporated at this link. And if you like the game or the concepts, the conceits that are in the game, I would fully recommend watching the show. It's still on there, it's still free, and hopefully it will be available forever. And hopefully we'll get a season 5, at least 2 more seasons and a movie. Who knows? If you liked the concept of the game and you're thinking, well, perhaps he'll make more, I'll probably put news of the games I'm making next up in the game. You can subscribe to the YouTube channel. Well, I will definitely put something up when I have more news about the game I'm working on now. It's been in development for a few years now. I'm getting close to revealing it or revealing it for real. And hopefully I'll see you then. Feel free to leave a comment below. I hope you enjoyed the postmortem playthrough director's commentary. Thank you. Bye-bye.